We are live talking about
Yay.
New York Giants football and Saquon
Mhm.
Barkley in the Super Bowl. And I actually did this week get another of these football cards that I've been collecting, the jersey cards. This is Jeremy Shockey, who is a Giant from the back in the aughts. He was a tight end for and this one is actually a game used piece of a jersey, not just a piece of jersey like those some ones I showed last week, but this is actually a Jeremy Shockey game used. And this one set me back with tax and shipping $3.50. Yeah, not a lot of expense to collecting New York Giants memorabilia right now.
Mhm.
But I got one of those. Mm-hmm.
I still don't know if I'm going to bother watching the Super Bowl. I I was at a watch party online last year where I had to see the Super Bowl with a 30 seconds delay because I was
Ah.
watching it online. Oh, but that thing, it it was never going to end. Why were they stopping all the time? They weren't moving. Is that and is that supposed to be violent? Everybody was falling around like daisies. And then you talk smack about soccer?
You've
No.
never seen offensive and defensive line play.
No.
That's where the most violence is. You're in a fist fight every play of the game. And they actually have taken a lot of the big hits out of football because it used to be a wide receiver would go over the middle to catch a ball, and a safety would just hit him without even the wide receiver knowing he's there. I mean, a lot of the big hits were like on completely defenseless players. And then they got sued for concussions, so they've been cutting down on hits like that. So it's not nearly as violent as it once was. But the offensive and defensive line is where the offensive and defensive line is like a kung fu battle because there's a lot of hand fighting going
Mm.
on and guys shoving each other around. So that's where the most violence is. Um, Well, like they have actually taken a lot of the big hits out of the game. That and you used to be able to like crush the quarterback like 3 seconds after we let the ball go. You'd see the quarterback let the ball go, and then someone would just hit him in the ribs. But these quarterbacks are are way too valuable to do that anymore. So they protect the quarterbacks a lot more. Like I can still remember one time back in like well, I forget which Super Bowl it was. It was like 2001 and it was right before the Super Bowl. There had this one guy who played for Tampa Bay, Tony Saragusa, who was like a 320-pound defensive lineman. And Rich Gannon was the Raiders quarterback. And Tony Saragusa just, during a perfectly legal play at the time, like knocked Rich Gannon down and then just fell on him with his full weight, 320 pounds, and like broke his ribs or something. Rich Gannon was gone from the game and the Raiders had no chance. You're not allowed to do that anymore. If you land with if a defensive player lands with his full weight on a quarterback these days, it's a 15-yard penalty. You do it twice, they kick you out of the game. But like that used to be completely legal. So a lot of that stuff they've gotten rid of. Like there was one guy even before my time. Good evening there, Wilson. There was one. What was his
Hello.
name? Deacon Jones was his name. Once again, he's a defensive lineman. This guy was like 6'6", 280 pounds, and he had this move he called a head slap, and he had hands the size of dinner plates. So what he would do as soon as he came off the line at the offensive player is he would wind up and he would slap the player with his hand on the side of his helmet. He was giving guys concussions. So it's like like in the 70s, they specifically outlawed that the head slap because it was like this one guy was so big and strong he was giving guys concussions with that move. So if things get too violent in the NFL, they actually, especially these days, cut that stuff out.
Mm. So I get more fist fighting from the pit crews in NASCAR races.
But as um as one basketball player once said, basketball is a contact sport. Football is a collision sport. And there's still a lot of truth to that. Good evening, timey wimey limey.
Yeah, the World Handball Championships. They had a lot of the handball used to have limited contact. You weren't supposed to touch
Right.
at all. But now everybody jumps on each other.
If you
The thing is,
drown them, you win. Oh no, that's water polo. That's a different handball.
the thing, everybody's jumping on each other while they're trying to shoot the ball to shoot the ball. And so you get a lot of more people actually getting slapped, but that gets you a red card. That gets you a red card or two, or if if the players going for if the forward is going for the shot and you hit the player's face, you get a red card. You can't play anymore. If the ball is not going for the shot yet, you're 2 minutes out. And the team has to play with one less, which usually ends up with the very interesting situation that when they're playing one man down, but they're attacking the goalkeeper leaves the field to be replaced by a field player. Yeah. The other thing, these matches used to be a lot slower. Like European basketball. European basketball used to be a lot. Okay, but now there's a bunch of NBA rejects. So European basketball is mostly made up from people who couldn't make the NBA draft. But in handball, it used to be a lot slower, and so games would be something like 25-20 because you play an hour. But nowadays you can go up to 40-35, and that's a normal game. So you play a lot more. Handball has gotten a lot more interesting, except for America, which got taken out in the first stage. Portugal made it into the semifinals. We got taken out by the world champions. And then in the third place game, we lost to the European champions. So it's a record for us. We never went that far. So maybe handball gets a little bit of attention after this, because the only national team who didn't have a sponsor on their jerseys was us.
How are you doing tonight, Wilson?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Oh, that's good. Did you make it to the comic shop this week?
I did not. I did not have books waiting for me, so
Yeah,
it was like I could go and just see what's on the shelf, but it was cold and I didn't want to go outside.
It was icy out on Thursday. Oof.
Right. And because of that, it was like, I'm not going to go out. I don't have books waiting for me.
Right.
And I was like, I can make the decision on Friday if I decide to go. And then today was like, I found myself in that unique position of, freelancers hurry up and wait.
Right.
So I'm in the waiting stage. So it's like, well, I don't have anything to do. I do not need to go outside. So I'm just going to straighten up the studio a bit, move things around, do some cleaning, get some paperwork shredded and stuff like that. So I decided, I'll spend the day doing that. So all I really managed to do is make a bigger mess in my studio because, the first thing of cleaning, the first thing of cleaning is make a bigger mess. So that's so I have piles of stuff all over the place. But, rediscovered some books I just had lying around, like the Savage Land Chronicles.
What is that?
So this is a reprint of the first, I think, 4 or 5 issues of
Marvel
Fanfare. So it's the trade paperback of Marvel Fanfare, the first, I think 4 or 5 issues. And Marvel Fanfare is definitely
4
one of those
issues.
books that it was the first
The
4?
first, yeah, the first 2 issues. That thing was a Marvel team up that was sitting in the drawer.
Yes.
It's a 2-part Marvel team up: Spider-Man and Spider-Man Kaiser, Angel and Spider-Man Kaiser, and then
Michael Gold.
Michael Golden artwork.
Yeah, and then Claremont did 2 more stories to pick because there was a imagine Claremont actually solving a dangling plot line over what happened to Sauron.
So I remember reading the first issue, the first 2 issues of the Savage Land stories, which, as mentioned before, Michael Golden artwork.
Right.
The disappointment of young Wilson Ramos picking up the next issue, thinking that it was going to continue to be Michael Golden doing X-Men, and it turned out to be Dave Cockrum, was just so much of a letdown. Again, me as a kid, not appreciating Cockrum's artwork at the time, but going from Golden to Cockrum, and then not have Spider-Man in the story either was another thing for me where it was like, oh, luckily I kept with the issues, but here's the thing with the very first issue of the of Marvel Fanfare. The inside covers were a pinup of the Silver Surfer. So my original issue does not have the cover because I removed it to hang up that picture of Silver Surfer in the book. So it's like, again, being a kid, oh, this is pretty. Let me tear it out of the and hang it up.
I don't think I ever tore out a pinup.
I did on that, and I think that
never occurred to me. But I know it occurred to a lot of people.
Oh yeah. So in that particular issue, is like I did that. Now I'm almost sure. I mean, I haven't checked. I'm almost sure I had picked up a replacement book for that.
Yeah.
I liked that story so much because, again, I think that might have been my first introduction to Michael Golden at the time, and I was really enjoying the story and the book, and the artwork blew me away. Where it was like I really enjoyed Golden's work. And again, these were the early years of me collecting. That was like, this was amazing. And all I ever wanted was to just have more Spider-Man Golden artwork and not get it until basically the very last issue or close to last issue of Marvel Fanfare, where he does a Hulk story. And again, it was one of those things. This is, again, all before I even was aware of the way things were done in comics anyway, not knowing that the very first Golden story was, a story that was in the file draw for Marvel Team Up.
I have to say that I remember when Marvel Fanfare first came out, and they were sort of selling it as the best artists with the best printing on the best paper.
Yes.
That Marvel Fanfare was supposed to be, special. And that first Golden story was pretty special.
Yes.
I don't know what came after it, but as time, I and others quickly caught on that it was Inventory's story, the series. It stopped being special pretty quickly. It still had a few highlights, but it was. The promise of Marvel Fanfare was not fulfilled.
Yeah, and a bunch of issues had artist portfolios as filler.
Yeah.
I didn't mind that as much because I thought those portfolios were pretty nice. But again, it was like, ooh, they're spending some pretty money on that Baxter paper, and it was like, again, ooh, the Michael Golden story. All right, that's worth it for that price. Second issue, yeah, this is going great. Love it. Third issue, ram, stop, smack. Dave Cockrum is like, oh, Michael Golden would have done great with these X-Men.
Yeah,
And
I'm gonna have to look who was in the other ones, the early ones, because I don't even remember.
Actually, let me have the
it was some fun
personalized listing
stuff,
here.
like
I have them somewhere, but
like
I haven't had them out in so long.
the John Byrne all pinup issue of the Hulk.
Yeah, that was like,
Again, that at that time for me, that was like that's pretty neat.
The George
Uh,
Perez Black Widow, I think, was in
Yeah.
there a little later on. That was all
Well,
right.
Yeah.
That Barry Windsor Smith Hulk no the Thing story
Hmm
Yeah,
that
that
was
was a
there as
good
well.
one
There
too.
was little bits of promise there, but it really, I mean, it was inventory story. You could tell.
Yeah, the Jungle Book adaptation by P. Craig Russell.
Yeah, I was like
That was
P.
different.
Craig Russell. Huh.
But I think it's more. It's not so much that it became a bunch of inventory, but it got weird. So I'm looking here. There's a weird Cloak and Dagger story,
Right.
which was about they were Bill Mantlo was laying it on pretty thicker than usual on the drugs are bad ticket.
Yeah, those early Cloak and Dagger stories were very preachy.
Mhm.
Not the greatest.
They finally published that Weird World story that they didn't finish because Mike
Right.
Pluggett quit Marvel,
Hmm
and then they had to explain why they redesigned one minor character.
I remember
Because
getting that and being disappointed by it.
but there was a couple of interesting
Even though
ones
that
around here.
didn't someone like John Buscema draw that?
He drew. Here's the thing: the story that appears in Marvel Fanfare is
Right.
chronologically before Warriors of the Shadow Realm,
Okay.
and because the first part of that in the first part of that story, which appeared in Fanfare,
Mhm.
had already been drawn by Plug in the 70s.
Ah.
And so they just kept it. But then they published Shadow Realm anyway without finishing that story. So John Buscema had never seen the character's actual design, so he just made one up. So when they reprinted that story, when they ran that story in Fanfare,
Uh-huh.
they had to explain why the character did not look the same way. If they couldn't come up, they could not possibly come up with an in-story explanation. So that well, he was just drawn like that. Okay.
Sleepy Reader says hello. Let's see. Finity says, so to recap last week, Run Lola Run, Edge of Tomorrow, and Groundhog Day are consecutive and happening at the same character. Whereas Sliding Doors is more like Star Trek, Mirror Mirror, in that it's happening concurrently to different copies of original characters. Which reminds me, I just discovered there's a time loop movie came out last year. Well, I don't remember the name of it. I just saw, but with Mary Louise Parker. But I'm gonna watch that one too. Hold on a second. Let me see. It's over on my computer over here. I want to see what its name is. Uh-oh, all my hard drives moved. A new time loop movie named Omni Loop. Came out in 2024. Omni Loop, starring Mary Louise Parker. That's her name, I think. And I'm like, ooh, new time loop movie. Gotta watch that.
And there was a television show, I think on Netflix, that was a pretty interesting time loop movie.
I'll be right back. I need some water.
Which was with I forget the name of the actress. It was called I completely forget the name. Something dolls. Similar to like those nesting dolls, those Russian nesting dolls.
Oh yes, I did see
There's
that
a
one. That was
movie or a show.
I think it was
that
maybe named Russian Doll, right?
Maybe it was named Russian Doll.
It was on Netflix.
It was on Netflix.
Starred that
And
red-headed woman who played a
Yes.
Columbo character too. Yeah, that was a pretty good one.
that was a good one. And she had a sequel to that as well.
Yes, there was
But it,
2 seasons, I think.
yes, there were 2 seasons, but that was quite interesting because she was stuck in
Right,
a time loop, and then she runs into someone who's also stuck in a time loop.
right. I
That
think
was
this
interesting
I
in
think the
itself.
the first season she was stuck in a time loop. The second season, there was like a time traveling subway.
Yes, she could go back in time. So it was like
Right.
they didn't give her the same type of thing. It was just
Yeah, it was
that
a
it was like
different type of
here,
thing.
here's something else that you could run into, which I
Yeah,
found that interesting. That you don't get stuck in that type of
time
thing
loop.
again.
Yeah, I remember that. I enjoyed that one a lot. She also did another show, the same actress, like a couple years later. I can't remember, but it was kind of based on Columbo, and she did a nice job with that. It was kind of based on The Fugitive and Columbo because she was a fugitive, but she was solving crimes.
Oh, I did not see that. All right,
Yeah,
that I have to look up because I liked her in that nesting doll.
yeah, she's good in this one too. And they even literally stole one Columbo plot in one of the because they even it's like no secret that they were doing Columbo.
Right.
So it was good stuff. And I this week finished up reading the Keith Giffen back issue, the tribute to Keith Giffen, and it was really interesting. I enjoyed it thoroughly because it turns out I really didn't know that much about Keith Giffen. Um, I first, my first Keith Giffen comic was around Defenders number 50 when he was doing this Jack Kirby thing. And I was kind of fat. I remember being as a kid liking it. And I remember, I feel, wow, he's doing a Jack Kirby thing, but but he really had like his own spin on it. He wasn't just sort of aping Kirby. He was taking Kirby and turning it into something else. But I never realized that he completely screwed up the beginning of his career. At one point, he just decided he wanted to draw comics. So he went into, that's one of those stories. He went into New York City, I think up to DC Comics and then over to Marvel Comics, and they hired him on the spot, which doesn't happen that often. I think what is it? I think Neil Adams gave him the high sign. It was one of those. And then he went over to DC Comics and got some work. And then they don't really say what he did, but I think he didn't turn work in. He screwed up his deadlines so badly that I don't know if he was too embarrassed to contact his DC editors or his DC editors had enough of him and just wouldn't speak to him anymore. So like in the early 80s, there was like a couple of years between him working at Marvel and DC and him going back to work at DC. And it was only his girl, because he was like working some random job in a warehouse or whatever. And it was only his girlfriend at the time who was like, no, you should go draw comics. And I think I can't even remember, she either completely encouraged him or even called the editor. I can't remember which it was. And he went back, humbled and apologized. And I think it was Paul Levitz he screwed over. And Paul was like, all right, we'll give you another chance. And that's when his career started in comics for the second time after he bombed out badly. So it's interesting. That's something I didn't know.
No, I didn't know that either. It's a good story.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the funny thing with the industry is like you mentioned about him just showing up and getting work.
Yeah.
A few people have done that,
Yeah.
and there's been plenty of times where it's like there have been plenty of times where you have people mess up and then have a comeback.
Right.
And there was a few that changed their name completely just so they could come back.
Michael
Frank Quitely.
Hernandez changed his name to Michael Bear. I remember that one because we knew him in the Marvel, and then a nice guy. But I think he had such deadline problems, he changed his name.
Frank Quitely, same thing.
I didn't realize he screwed up. I didn't.
I think he was missing too many deadlines that he had to come back with a brand new name altogether.
Which is Frank Quitely.
Yes, Frank Quitely is the new name. I think the original was Vincent Deegan, but I'm not too sure.
I know Frank Quitely is a pen name.
Yes.
A play on quite frankly.
I was always under the impression he wanted to have a pen name because
I didn't know he's. I thought, but first of all, I didn't know it was a pen name till our friend Bunch told me. He's like, "Oh, this is an obvious pen name," and I was like, "Oh, it is." I just never noticed.
Sometimes you don't notice it, and again, the only reason why I even knew about it because someone told me. I don't remember who told me that it was a pen name because he wasn't meeting deadlines,
Okay.
and because I didn't have his name in our database because again I didn't know it was a pen name. But sometimes you don't know it's a made up name until like sometimes say it out loud. For a while I was looking for a Justin who did some inks, and it wasn't until it said his name out loud just in time I realized, oh, this is a pen name. This book made it just in time because it was like 5 inkers on it.
And the number of people on YouTube who call him Frank quietly is amazing. Hear that all the time.
There
half the trailer, and I'm already intrigued by Omni-Loop. Thank you, Jared Osborne. The Cavern of Chaos Tom Loop only infects Portuguese people. That's why Paulo never ages.
Yeah, there's a guy called Ken McDonald who supposedly wrote the Amazing Spider-Man annual where Iron Man 2020 shows up. Ken McDonald was a name that Jimmy Shooter had invented, and he let somebody else use. I can't remember who. I think it was Michelini on this one. And I used to think Krusty Bunkers was an actual person's name.
I found out about that one like immediately. I must have read it somewhere that Krusty Bunkers was the Neil Adams Continuity Studios guys. But it's like that was never a mystery to me for whatever reason.
I don't think I ever ran into that name.
Oh yeah, in the 70s, the Krusty Bunkers would be credited with stuff.
Okay.
And it was Neil Adams Continuity Studios guys who would pitch in to get something done.
It was whoever was in the studio at the time. And the art spotters on the Grand Comics database have some fun trying to figure out who inked what in all of the stories. And there's a why check 1 page, Joseph Rubinstein, 2 pages, something like that. I once found I was going through the Grand Comics database and I saw some Spider-Man fill-in, and the writer's name was Ben Trovato. Now, unless you know Italian, you wouldn't know that that's an obvious pen name. Because it means well found, or so it's somebody who couldn't write the comic, probably used that he had a story lying around, and probably an editor. Who were the editors at the time? Fingeroth, Ralph Macchio, I don't know. So if they had if they couldn't write because of Shooter's edict, and they had a story lying around and needed a fill-in, just make up a name and have your wife voice.
And here is a Legion of Superheroes poster that Keith Giffen penciled and burned him out so badly on the Legion that he quit the book a few months later.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, come on, dude, pace yourself. I don't know. But comic, young comic artists are especially famous for that, doing something like that, and they go so hard at it that they just collapse. They just burn themselves out and collapse at the end. I'm always like, pace yourself. But nope, they can't. They're like, ooh, but this is what made him quit the Legion the first time. And I'm trying to think that there's also in the back this Keith Giffen's 20 greatest hits of the back issue era. That's really a nice look back at his career. Like, I didn't realize that his very first Marvel stuff was in Deadly Hands of Kung Fu, #1. And he was, I didn't realize he was the designer of the Jack of Hearts. But I think he only drew him this one time. I don't even know if he did the second issue. He only drew him kind of this one time. So that was interesting. He did Deadly Hands of Kung Fu, Who is the White Tiger, writer Bill Mantlo, artist Keith Giffen, and Rico Rival. But that's where he got his start at Marvel. And he even did a pretty interesting, let me show you this. I'll get it close with these. Early Giffen Satana story. And he drew the first Rocket Raccoon. It was right there.
What I like about that story is what I like about that story is that Rocket Raccoon doesn't sound at all like Rocket Raccoon.
If we skip ahead to the there's a little because they have different people given the remembrances of Keith Giffen. And there's one here with Andy Schmidt, who worked with us at Marvel. And he's said Andy Schmidt shares this story about Keith Giffen pitching ideas. During the first Annihilation series, Keith would come into my office semi-regularly and pitch this idea of Rocket Raccoon living with Groot, the living tree, and they were a duo. Was Groot Rocket's house? Were they partners or even lovers? We will never say, Keith would tell me. But my feeling was we really had to make a statement that Annihilation wasn't that silly. And Rocket and Groot as a concept, while fun, was a bit too silly for what we were doing. But I told him, look, if the first event works and we get approval to do more, I will absolutely let you use Rocket and Groot. So you can blame me, that's Andy Schmidt, either for holding Rocket and Groot back an extra year or for approving them in that next series. But if you like them together, then you will really need to thank Keith. That was his idea all the way. So I didn't realize that it was Keith Giffen who was the one who also came up with the whole idea of teaming up Rocket Raccoon and Groot, which, of course, now the whole world knows.
Right.
I found that interesting. Sleepy Reader says, so all the artists can blame Giffen for the Jack of Hearts difficult costume. Yep. They sure can. And he was very much drawing like Barry Windsor Smith doing Kirby and this Conan-like character in that Satana. That was definitely had. I mean, it looks like Kirby and Barry Windsor Smith doing Kirby.
Right.
Have you ever seen early Conan? Barry Windsor Smith is, or even what did he do before Conan? I can't remember. He really
a couple of
Kirby.
X-Men stories and that Conan that Conan story, which was not a Conan story, a Star the Slayer. Because the Star of the Slayer story looks like a bad Kirby imitation. It does look like Conan. Although the story kind of reminds me of something else that Robert E. Howard did. I think he had a story where somebody was dreaming that he was King Cole, and that may have been where they copied that one from.
I have a collection of the Corbin Star. I think that's his name with 2 R's from Marvel, from like I don't know the 70s or something, which I never knew existed. Oh yeah, Smith did Daredevil very early. I forgot about that too. Yes, looking like Kirby. So what comes after Satana? I didn't realize he also did the first Power Girl. Or is it?
Yeah, he was drawing the All-Star comics, the
Yeah.
first few issues. He was the one who kept enlarging her breasts.
No, that was Woody, I think.
That was Woody?
Yeah, the inker. Keith Giffen and Wally Wood. I read before that was Woody.
I think I remember some interview where with Giffen saying it was him, and it had to have been a Giffen interview because Woody wasn't alive anymore. But whenever Rick Estrada did a fill-in, he forgot. He didn't know. He wasn't in on a joke. So
it could have been both of them too. I mean that's something you can see Giffen and Woody collaborating on.
Sure. Yeah.
Making her breasts bigger each issue. But yeah, I didn't realize he was drawing that. Writers: Jerry Conway, plot Paul Levitt, script artists Keith Giffen and Wally Wood. All-Star Comics number 62. Because that really does sound like both of them. So, so that was nice to read about. And then what else? Oh, here's where I first saw him. The Defenders 50th issue. And he did stuff like have the Hulk smash him right through those panels. As you see, this is really his Kirby riff. Yeah, there's a, it's Kirby, but through Giffen.
Yeah.
Sleepy Reader says, I always heard it was Wood. The fabulous 50th issue. So this was where I first saw Keith Giffen in August of 1977. So what year was that? What was that first one? Let me see. Deadly Hands of Kung Fu was 76. So 76 and 77. And then nothing till 82. So it was a good 5 years there where he wasn't drawing comics because he screwed up so badly.
When was he doing Defenders?
I don't think he was doing it that long. In the 50s was just it. I only remember a few issues. I don't even think he made it anywhere near 60.
Right.
But I'm only going by memory. But it was a good few. Let me see if it says in the beginning. See if I can find the spot where he's talking about.
And he comes back in 82 for Legion, right?
Yeah. Let me see if I can find where he talks about it. Legion, science fiction, Great Darkness Saga. His chronology is all screwed up. What did he do? Okay. I'm working with Wally Wood. On top of that, I'm doing breakdowns and doing storytelling for Wally Wood. I landed there, and then it was sort of long, drawn-out, agonizing period of doing everything wrong and blowing myself completely out of the business in about a year. I could have written a book, What Not to Do. I wound up down in South Jersey selling Kirby vacuum cleaners door to door. How long did that last? About 6 months. Then I got into repossessions because I was small and thin and I could fit through half-open car windows. There's nothing like sneaking into some guy's parking lot by his apartment building down in Atlantic City in the dead of night and hot wiring a car in front of an applauding audience of hookers and junkies. I used to work with a Neanderthal man who would actually carry a gun, but I was the small, skinny guy who could do this kind of stuff. He was in there. He was in there in case things got hairy knuckled. I guess after doing that for a while, comics didn't seem so bad, says Cardigan. Giffen says, I came back up north and I got into phone collections and a series of dead-end jobs. She wasn't my wife then, but I guess my wife-to-be had been dating me for 3 months and didn't know I could draw. That's how firmly I had shut the door on it. When she found out, she started campaigning with me to get back into it. And finally, she won me over and she said, don't you at least owe them the opportunity of hanging up on you? Because I slinked out of town, tail between the legs. I just disappeared. So I called Joe Orlando, figuring Joe was the one I had done the most damage to, Joe and Paul Levitz. And Joe just said, come in and we'll talk. He sat me down and he liked what I had to offer, but I screwed up so badly I had to be on a probationary period. And he said, if you're willing to do that, we're willing to give you another shot. And I've been at DC pretty much since. I owe a lot to Joe Orlando for taking a chance on a guy who was a complete and utter, what a screwball, what a foul up, gold brick, you name it. And then to Dick Giordano. At that point, he was editing some ghost books as well as one or two other things. And he was the one who hooked me up with Robert Kanigher to do some stories to see if I could match a deadline. Then Mike Barr offered me Dr. Fate back up in the Flash. And then Paul Levitz was kind enough to let bygones be bygones and give me a shot at the Legion. So he really must have screwed up and slunk out of town with his tail between his legs, as he says, without even saying a farewell. But after the Defenders, I think the next time I saw him was on the Flash. Hold on, let me move this ringing phone.
I'm trying to remember when I first got introduced to him, and I'm not even sure because I wasn't reading any of those books that he pointed out.
I was a Marvel kid.
Yeah.
So I didn't read much DC until the early 80s when George Perez started up the Teen Titans. That's when I started looking at more DC books because I think Gil Kane was drawing Superman at the time, so I was checking some of that out. And I started buying the Flash just for the Keith Giffen backups of Dr. Fate. That's one thing because I was not a Flash fan, but I was buying it just because of these Keith Giffen Dr. Fate comics, which were pretty good. It was solid stuff. That was probably the first time I'd seen any Keith Giffen artwork since that Defenders stuff. I think I assumed he had just been working that whole time. I wasn't like, oh, this guy's back. Because I just assumed he had been like working for DC at that time.
Yeah, he might have been on books you weren't reading.
Yeah, what books I wasn't reading because I wasn't reading any DC stuff. And then, let's see, I started picking up World's Finest because it was like a double-sized comic, and it had Jose Garcia Lopez, Wonder Woman, Superman. I can't even remember what he was drawing. Because at that time, World's Finest comics had like 4 different stories in it. And none of them were particularly spectacular, that they were all pretty good. And the Jose Garcia Lopez art was the draw for me. And the fact that a double-size issue of mediocre comics has its own value. Because it's like, if you buy like a single sort of mediocre comic, it's like, that was a mediocre comic. But if you have like 4 different mediocre stories, at least you get variety. So that's one of the reasons I liked World's Finest. Was the variety of mediocrity in it. Oh, it also had the Trevor Von Eden Green Arrow. That was good art. I don't remember any of the stories, but that art was good.
before 1986, people only cared about two things that where Green Arrow shows up: the Kirby stories and Green Arrow as a sidekick to the Green Lantern.
Yep. Huh. Yep. And then I followed Keith Giffen from The Flash to Legion of Superheroes, the next one on our list, number 6, which was good. And I did not know who Darkseid was. The big thing in Legion of Superheroes, the Great Darkness saga, was that was the first time that Darkseid came back since the Kirby New God stuff. And they made a big dramatic entrance of it. And I had a vague notion it was a Kirby villain from the New Gods, but I really had, Darkseid wasn't as big a villain as he is now. Now Darkseid is like Doctor Doom. But then he really wasn't. And them bringing him back to in 1982, or maybe 83, it says here, because the Great Superhero 290 to 294. Okay. 294, so August to December 1982. So, okay, so it was 82. Them bringing back Darkseid was a big deal. And bringing him back in the Legion of Superheroes was like unheard of. What year did New Gods end?
That it was canceled in 1971. It was brought back by that horrible story by Jerry Conway. That was around 77, I think, because it came out as there was an issue, a first issue special, and then they brought back the title.
Right. I remember the relaunch of it was not particularly good, but not that I saw much of it.
I think it was around 81 that they did the reprint series. And the graphic novel was in 84, 85, something like that. But then I think he had appeared in Superpowers, but that wasn't in continuity, right?
That was a toy line thing.
Yeah, Superpowers was just to support the toy line and the continuations of the Super Friends cartoons.
So yeah, they bring back Darkseid, which nobody remembers. Well, some people would remember, but he really wasn't that important. And bringing back, the thing is, the Legion normally did not interact with people from the regular timeline, except Superboy and sometimes Supergirl. But Darkseid would be good for it because he would be immortal,
right?
And he would be powerful. So
I remember. I have it in a hardcover collection too now somewhere.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, but that was actually a good choice looking back on it, and it brought back Darkseid to people who'd never heard of him.
Right.
It showed what Darkseid looked like with outside the Kirby style.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was, and after that it was in. The New Gods don't show up in Crisis.
No.
But they are brought back in Legends. And that's when the Fourth World enters the DC universe for real. And it was a good idea, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, though I kind of agree with Keith Giffen's assessment, and when he was like, I think we peaked too early with that run of Legion.
Probably, yeah.
I think there's some truth to that.
Mm-hmm. Right, because the Brazilian publisher made a big deal about the war with the Khans, but that thing was over in like 3 issues.
Yeah. I remember I bought the Legion of Superheroes for a while, like as long as Giffen was on it. Let me see if I check my database, see if I still have them. But I remember none of them being as good as that Dark Side stuff. Let's see. Where are my Legion of Superheroes? 300 to 311. Did I get rid of the stuff before that? So I must have bought up till 311.
I know there was a hardcover collection of the things that were Earth War, I think. But I didn't buy it when that came out. Yeah.
I was never that huge a Legion fan anywhere. I liked the Mike Grell Legion. I mean, I bought that was a little bit before my time, but like in the early '80s, I probably picked up issues of the Mike Grell Legion when I could find them as back issues. They were okay.
The first issues the first years are kind of silly. Yes, you can't get over it, but they are full of promise, and just the notion that they use Superboy as a prop, and even though the idea was that Superboy was the hook, but in the story, Superboy was the prop. The other guys are the hook, and the more stories they run, the more developed their personalities become. Even when they're still in the 60s, and you can see all the pre-Infantino editorial design, mental design that's actually terrible. But you see the personalities developing, especially when they have Brody sacrificing himself, or when they kick Starboy out of the Legion, when one of Triplicate Girl's bodies dies, and then Shooter comes in, and you have Feral Lad and Nemesis Kid, and those are good additions to the mythos. So little by little, it builds up into something that's interesting. The world building becomes more intricate, more fascinating. So by the time we get to the mid '70s, the Legion is a consistently good comic. You can read every issue and you get something interesting all the time.
Let's see. Finity says Mike Grell's John Sable freelance for first was awesome.
Yes, it was. And
I don't know if I'd call it awesome. I mean, I bought it all.
It's his best work.
I enjoyed it. But I remember I haven't tried reading it in years, but I remember I tried reading it like in the '90s again, and I just couldn't get into it. I don't try. I still have the issues here somewhere because you can't get rid of them. Nobody wants them.
Yeah, I get it. But I have those collections those Digest Sense collections that First Second did, and you read all those stories in a row, and it's pretty good because
I'll have to try reading them again because I haven't tried reading them in 25 years.
Yeah, John Sable is an adventurer, but a story is not about his adventures.
Right.
And it really is the more personal moments and the way he interacts with the cast who are all normal people. That's the interesting part of that comic.
Infinity says, admittedly, I haven't reread Sable since I was a teenager. Yeah, that's the problem. Like I said, I enjoyed it. I mean, I was probably in my 20s when they came out in the 80s. So I liked it. What year did it first come out?
First starts in 83. No, it didn't start immediately. No, it did start in '83 when Capital Comics goes out of business.
It was that early? Then I was a teenager.
Yeah.
I turned 20 in '86. 1985? Okay.
No, yeah, first yeah, John Sable starts in '85. Yeah, but first goes back to '83 because they start with the leftovers from Capital, Nexus and Badger.
Sleepy says, in my memory, I enjoyed his Green Arrow better than Sable. I was not fond of his Green Arrow. Not that I thought it was terrible, but it didn't really work for me. To me, it was just taking the Green Arrow and making him dark.
Yeah,
Not that I liked it. Not that that was terrible. Just not. Random Reed says, oh, I love John Sable. I'm working on rebuilding my collection of them. Badger was great, too. Hold on a second with Badger. I remember his security system that locked him but let in crooks and federal agents. Very ahead of the curve. I thought Sable was a lot like Green Arrow. Speaking of Badger.
Well, when he writes Mike Grell as a type, but they're not identical. Warlord, Green Arrow, and John Sable, they're not identical. You can see the differences, but there is a type of personality that Grell uses for all his main characters.
Chris Girusso is with us. Good evening, Chris.
Hello, Chris.
What's up, guys?
The fools? They didn't know Marvel Comics was my client all along. That's not a thought balloon I see I see on top of Chris's head all the time now. I don't know why. It was the style.
You can put whatever words you want in a thought balloon, though. So,
I know. Those are the words I chose. But this week, I picked up the Badger Mad Monkeys Shock and Roll #1, a $6.99 comic, 30 pages. But what's funny is I got 5 comics this week. Only one of them is a regular comic of mine. Because I can remember in Final Order Cutoff 5 weeks ago, I was like, I only have one comic. So I started looking around for one-shots and first issues to get. And I must have seen this one and went $7 freaking for a Badger. No, thank you. So I didn't pre-order it. Then I saw one copy on the stands. And I was looking at it and I was going, I only had 4 comics. Under $20. I was like, you know what? Maybe just out of sheer nostalgia, I'll buy the Badger. I really shouldn't have bothered. It wasn't worth $7. It was just okay. It's Mike Barron and Val Mayerick. And it's like the Badger is kind of a bit player in this story. Because we've got, I don't know, there's some like rich character over here who bought a private island, and there's all these protesters who are saying he's gonna do bad things to the environment, and the Badger is his bodyguard or something, and they're all moving to this private island, these 4 other characters, and animals are supposed to come to the Badger and give him guidance, and then the rest of it is like them all moving to this island, and nothing really happens. Monkeys throw a rock or poo at the billionaire, and I can't even tell you what happens. I think some of it's supposed to be comedic, but it's not. And I think there might be some social satire in here, but I'm not 100% sure. And it's all just pretty generally not very interesting. I don't know. There's trained kimono dragons in a pool for some reason. I'm not getting another issue of this one. And here's another. There's a whaling boat out there that's killing a whale. So the Badger calls on these 2 dolphins to bring them out to the whaling boat. where he's going to take on the Whalers. And, I don't know what's going on in this book. It is so weird. Let's see. I'll wait until it's in the dollar box with all the other badgers.
Yeah.
Then he says, I have very strong opinions on thought balloons. But anyway, and Sleepy says, my shops did not have any badger. There was only one copy in my shop. So unfortunately, Mike Barron may be distracted by his anger at the... See, that's what
That was self-published, right?
Yeah, it was probably kickstarted. It's first comics.
There's a new first, but
right.
I'm not sure many people noticed it in the previous catalog.
Or maybe my shop saved me money by not carrying it. I see his anger at the left might just be it's just confusing in here. It's not very pointed. That's why I say there might be social satire in here, but I'm not sure. Because I'm not sure if they have the protesters protesting this billionaire, and he generally seems to be nice, but who trusts billionaires?
When you bring back satirical characters after they've been dormant for 20 years, they are not as relevant. Baron can sit on Nexus for 20 years and bring him back, and there'll be something interesting happening in outer space. You have Badger do something funny, and 20 years later, the joke's not funny anymore, and that has nothing to do with Baron's political opinions. It's just a consequence of wanting to write humor.
And it's like, I think this is a joke. Because I think that this character the scientist character is German, who's raising monitor lizards for the billionaire. And he's like, but what happens when you turn the monitors loose? What's to stop them from attacking tourists? Training, mein Kapitan. And then he stops and goes, honk, with a, Nazi salute, and they line up. I'm like, is the Nazi salute supposed to be a joke or social I don't even know.
I think he's trying to be funny, but yeah.
Are you sure it wasn't just an awkward gesture?
I'm pretty sure.
No, the guy's speaking German. It's obvious.
Great point, pal. I think it's a great point on your satire comment. Yeah. But
is the character autistic?
I don't think so.
No, he suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder, which triggered some sort of dissociative identity disorder. So he's nuts.
But really, it was so confusing, this issue, that I didn't know which were the jokes and which weren't. So no more. I think it's 30 pages for $7.
He's still calling people Larry?
Still called who?
People calling other people Larry.
I think he did one, and I'd forgotten. Oh, and also, let me get my loop here as a production note. Where'd my loop go? There it is. We'll give the production guys a. Let me check this out. Oh yeah, just what I thought. The lettering is a special. You probably won't show up on the camera, but I noticed this right away. The lettering is especially fuzzy and blurry because they used a CMYK rich black for the lettering.
I'll be back. I don't know when.
Which is amateur production move.
Right.
And what I have is a certain set of skills.
The difference between a black and a rich black is in CMYK printing, the black is just one plate. It's just the black plate. A rich black is they put color underneath the black plate. And you do that for like big areas of black, so it makes them darker. When you put color under the black, it makes them darker. But lettering is always supposed to be 100K because if things shift, it makes the lettering blurry because the lettering is all small and the 4 plates have to line up perfectly in order for the lettering to not be. So in comics, you make your lettering 100K and not rich black. Well, here they obviously didn't know that, and the lettering is a little blurry throughout the book. So that annoyed me a bit. I was like, oh, $7, and they couldn't even get that right. But a lot of people don't know that who put out comic books. Infinity says, CMYK Rich Black ain't the same as 100K. 'Tis true. Yes, there's somebody who knows a little bit of his production. We have a question for Chris from Eric P. Chris, will Marvel be doing a poster of your connecting covers? Can Chris hear us, or does he not have his headphones on?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
Hold on a second.
Will Marvel be doing a poster of the connecting covers?
Let me get my mic. Let me get my headphones back to answer this one.
My answer
Can you
would
hear
be
me?
hope so, but he doesn't think so.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're a little fuzzy.
No.
Is the mic too close to your mouth?
Mic's right there.
Okay, because you're.
How does this sound?
That sounds fine.
Okay. So no.
All right. So
It's not
that's pretty clear. So we're going to have to do what I did with my Marvel Fanfare #1. We're just going to have to rip those covers and make our own posters out of them.
Yeah. Infinity the Time says, crumbs, I better check my lettering. I bet it's a big old muddy rich black. 100 cyan, 100 magenta, 100 yellow, 100K. Hot mess. Yes, that would be very bad for your lettering.
I've seen those. They are definitely a hot mess.
I've had to fix those on whole books. They're
even after years of lettering, every once in a while something will get clicked incorrectly, and I would have my lettering would be in the wrong CMYK, and it's like I don't know where in the line something was copied wrong, and then all of a sudden that was the base text that switched everything into that, and it was like, oh. I ran into that a few times in paper cuts where it was like everything was clear until production called up and was like, could you check these pages? And then sure, what's wrong with them? It's like, oh, I have no idea how that happened on like one selected group of books. I ran into that, and sometimes again, you just never know when you're using shortcuts on a keyboard. I might have like hit something and made the sound effects appear on the page, but when it got printed, they were transparent. And it just happened to be like the stroke or something just was not seen in any of the PDFs, any of the JPEG, anything like that. Nope, it was totally fine until you get the printer's proof and you realize, oh, it just slipped through. It happens.
Yeah, I've had that problem. I've seen that problem like on occasion with letter. Like you said, the letterer doesn't know that somehow they turned a page or two or a balloon or two into rich black. But where I've had to do a lot of fixing on stuff is when the lettering is in the Photoshop document.
Yeah.
And it's all just Photoshop's default black. So I have to go through every balloon and delete the color off of the red, the magenta, cyan, and yellow channels. That's really annoying.
Yeah, I can see that. I definitely see that being annoying. Because I've run into that when there are people like reprinting something, and the only thing they have is like maybe just the they have the plates that are just flattened, and or
Right,
they'll
right.
have a digital file, and the only thing that exists is that one TIFF that was made years ago, and that's the only thing that exists.
Random Reads has a question for Chris. Chris, will you be at Heroes Con this year?
Yes.
He is full of answers for us tonight. He will,
Did you want more?
When and where is Heroes Con?
It's in Charlotte, North Carolina, in June. I think it's Father's Day weekend. Is it the 20th to the 22nd?
Ah,
I don't
Random
know.
Reed says, awesome. We'll see you there.
All right.
It looks like Finity have a strict no thought balloon policy, but there's still that darn dialogue, damn it. Everybody has a no thought balloon policy. They just put it in the captions and pretend it's not a thought balloon.
Yeah.
I know you know thought balloon guys have captions with all the thoughts in them. You can't trick me. See, Charlotte, June 20 to 22nd. Eric P. also hopes to go to Heroes Con this year.
All right.
You'll be signing all sorts of Marvel official handbook covers, including one taped together by Wilson as a poster.
Anything you bring me, I'll sign it.
So let's see.
What's
the
putting a
next?
milk carton?
I'll sign a milk carton. Did I draw it?
Nope.
He doesn't care.
If I drew the cover to that milk carton, I'll sign it.
Random Reads ask how much for a cover sketch.
I don't know.
You can work that out with him beforehand, and he can have it ready for you at Heroes Con.
Yeah. Here's a couple of frequent comments I get. You should charge more. You should charge less.
So contact Chris at chrisgcomics.com, and you can work it out with him and pick it up at Heroes Con.
You can do that. I'm also on all the social medias if that's easier.
Yep. Find them on Facebook.
There are also comments. You should give away sketches for free. Those will be promptly ignored.
Random Reed says, LOL, I'll do that. Finity says, no captions either. Can't stand characters thinking in movies or TV shows either. Keep it quiet, Dexter. Sleepy Reader says, captions are sophisticated because you don't immediately know whose thoughts they are, unless they color code them. And even then it takes a minute. Eric P says, if I go, I'll be wanting an AIM agent sketch. All right. AIM agents are the coolest. Let's see our next journey through Keith Giffen is DC Comics Presents number 52 and the creation of Ambush Bug. And I was a regular buyer of DC Comics Presents in 1982, really semi-regular, and I actually bought this one. I don't know if I still have it because I got rid of a lot of my DC Comics Presents, but I know I kept the later Ambush Bug issue. But I'm not sure if just looking at the cover, I would have known this had Ambush Bug in it. So I'm going to have to check. Matter of fact, let me check my database, see if it's in there. Because Ambush Bug was immediately a lot of fun because he was an annoying character. He just annoyed Superman. Let's see. Did I keep it or did I get rid of it? Where DC Comics Presents. What an issue number is this? 52. I still have it. All right. Somewhere on my shelf, I have the first appearance of Ambush Bug still. The one that everybody wants now, I know I got rid of, which is the He-Man. Nobody cared about He-Man. No comics collectors cared about He-Man back in the 80s. It was only like, in the 2000s where that's the issue everybody wants of DC Comics Presents. Because all the He-Man fans are grown up and wanting to buy that stuff back. But in case no one's ever read, like, matter of fact, I think we'll skip from number 7 to number 11 for a minute in the Ambush Bug miniseries, which came out in 1985. Did any of you guys ever read the Ambush Bug miniseries?
Nope.
It was
Nope.
I don't think I did.
Well, first of all, the original Ambush Bug stuff was funny because he was so annoying. His superpower, if you can call it that, because I think it was technology based, was based on he had these little flying bugs flying everywhere, and he could teleport to any one of them. Hence Ambush Bug, because he could show up immediately and ambush people. But he never actually fought Superman. He would just run away from him. He'd just annoy him and run away. And that was his superpower. Because like he knew he's not beating up Superman. So, and he would steal things and he'd run away. And I think the story ended with Superman using his microscopic vision and super speed to collect every bug in the city that he, every ambush bug. So therefore, Ambush Bug couldn't get away from him and he brought him to jail. And then the Ambush Bug miniseries, I remember loving it. Keith Giffen plot, Robert Lauren Fleming dialogue, because it was a pure comedy series. And a lot of it was Ambush Bug breaking the fourth wall and laughing at comics. Like the one thing I remember, it's like the Ambush Bug was telling us all about old Batman comics. And one of the things he was laughing at that was hysterical was Ace the Bat Hound. And Ambush Bug was like, yeah, Batman and Robin found this hound dog and decided to just adopt him and name him Ace the Bat Hound. And it's like, and the funniest thing about it, he's just like, Ambush Bug is just laughing. It's like, and they decided to put a mask on Ace the Bat Hound so no one would recognize him. So it was a lot of like making fun of, a lot of fourth wall breaking, a lot of making fun of Silver Age comics. And that just wasn't done in the, like, Fred Hembeck did some of that stuff, but like nobody at Marvel and DC did that. So to read that first Ambush Bug miniseries was such a breath of fresh air, especially when it had come out. 1984. That was kind of just at the beginning of the take everything seriously, grim and gritty stage. So that was some good stuff from Keith Giffen. What's the first Keith Giffen you guys read? Do you remember?
No.
Legion?
Because it was a Legion story, I think, but it was not an important one.
Ah.
I think it's the one where Colossal Boy tells his parents that he married a Derlin.
Do you remember your first Keith Giffen story, Wilson?
I'm trying to. I probably didn't really like. I know I read some of his books, and I'm sure it might have been something like Action Comics or something where I may have not been paying attention to who did the work. So I'm trying to see like what books was I picking up during my heyday of picking up comics. And most of the stuff, because I think he was mostly DC, and I didn't really
mostly
get
DC.
into DC until kind of like I didn't get into any DC until after Crisis, because Crisis kind of introduced me to the DC universe, and then at the same time they erased the whole thing. So, so the Legion miniseries, or Legends series, um, probably wasn't really until Justice League, until the
Okay.
stuff he was doing in Justice League. I would bet would probably be my first set of books, where
That was
he
probably a
is,
lot of people's first. Keith Giffen was at Justice League.
yeah, because I know I enjoy Justice League and Justice League International, so I was picking up that stuff then. So I know, so that's where I think is probably where I started with him. I don't think I was reading House of Mystery when he did it in the.
Tit Goblin says, I love Ambush Bug. Trencher was my first, followed by Lobo. Trencher is the book that Barry Dutter always finds and shows when he's Barry Dutter. We used to work with at Marvel. He was an editor. Now he deals in comics out in LA. So he's always posting on Facebook, whatever, when he goes to comic sales or finds comics somewhere. And Trencher shows up a lot.
I know I
think
read
that's
Lobo.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the next thing we got here is Omega Men #3, the issue that's always missing from all dollar bins. It's like you can find like all the issues of Omega Men in dollar bins, except for #3. And I never liked this cover.
No, it's not a good cover. It's also not a good look for Lobo either.
Yeah, that's the original Lobo. There's something about the symmetry of it, and it's just not very well designed. So that cover always makes me go, oof, they could have done that better. The way her legs blend in with the background, you can't even see them this small.
Yeah.
It's just not a particularly well done cover. But yeah, I remember buying this. I bought the Omega Men only briefly though, because I bought the Omega Men because Keith Giffen was drawing it, but he was like gone by issue 4. So I remember I bought a few more issues after that and then just kind of abandoned it. Let's see, do I have any left in my database? Because it just wasn't I forget who drew it after him, but he wasn't as good as Giffen. Let's see, do I have any Omega Men left? The Omega Men. I have issues 1 through 8. So I obviously bailed on Omega Man after issue 8. Eric P just said, I got my $1 marker notification yesterday. Anyone else? I was just going to mention that. If you remember a few weeks ago, Copic Markers was running a promotion where for $1 they'll send you a random sketch marker. I think Tit Goblin may have done it too. So they said they were going to be sending it out. And I think in February they said, they may have even said the end of February, whenever the promotion ended. So yeah, I too got my email notification that my $1 marker will be here soon. I hope I get a good color because it's random colors they're sending out. And I was just looking it up. Copic has like 360 colors. And I have about 120 Copic markers. So there's a 2 out of 3 chance I get a color I don't have already. But they also have a lot of like useless colors, a lot of like really light colors that I think the people who really like to blend use. And they're kind of useless to me because they're way too light and subtle. So I hope I don't get one of those. I hope I get a good one. Did you send away for that, Wilson? No. You're muted.
I did not. I think once after we talked about it, it left my brain, and I never went looking for it.
And I also got an email today that if you remember last week, I told you I bought a small piece of art from Tess Fowler. That's on its way now too. So that'll be cool when it comes. Oh, I'll show you another art thing I got this week, which is a pin of a color wheel,
Interesting.
which has an interesting story in that. Do you follow the color nerd on TikTok, Wilson?
Yes.
Right. I mentioned him. I think we've talked about him before. Well, this, the Gray Muse is a woman who makes pins. She's a small artist. She makes pins. She sells them online. I think this cost me $25, shipping and tax included, this pin. And last year, she put out a color wheel pin. And the color nerd, whose name on the back, I think it says here somewhere, Peter T. Donahue. But if you look up the color nerd on social media, you'll find him. He's a art teacher who's very into sort of scientific visual presentation of color. Because a lot of the color wheels that are taught are very outdated. For reasons that if you go, he'll tell you all about. But when she came out with her color wheel pin like last year, he criticized it as being wrong and outdated. And then just like last week, I saw an ad somewhere on social media where he was the one doing the ad for it. And he said, but instead of fighting, we collaborated. So they collaborated on this pin, getting the color wheel as much up to date and scientifically accurate as possible. So I thought that was a cool idea that they teamed up. So I decided to buy one for the $25, and it came this week. And
Nice.
see, I'm keeping it on the all for an extra $5. They'll send it to you as a keychain. I'm like, you know what? For an extra $5, I'll stick with the pin. I'll wear it. So, and it's called the color fidget because it's meant to be a fidget toy too. You can sit here and spin it.
Yeah.
Or you can also move these around and create color harmonies and contemplate the colors you want to use. So it's you can go to, was it the Gray Muse? Oh, first you can, if you want to, you can go there and get your own. And there's also a video with the color nerd explaining what this is. And it's at thegraymuse.com. Also, where's my... Got another thing that I haven't... oh, there we go. There's another QR code where you get a special message. I haven't seen what the special message is yet, but... Finished RGB and CMY is my 6-point holy color wheel. But what's wrong with color wheels basically is there's not enough greens. Because the way they make color wheels evenly spaced out isn't visually true. You have to kind of put more greens over it because the opposite of red isn't really green. It's a bluish green. So stuff like that he goes over. The compliments. Like, let's see if we... But that was just a fun thing I got this week. Fun thing. That tonight in fun things I got this week. Did you make it to the comic shop this week, Chris?
No, I didn't.
Did you get Savage Dragon 275?
I don't have it yet, but I have read it.
Okay, you read it on the proofreading chain, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and that's kind of a return to old form a little bit. Like, kind of things kind of really heated up.
Yeah.
What an ending! What an ending!
Interesting ending. Did you read your issue of it, Wilson?
I have not.
So we won't spoil the ending for
Oh man, you just wait.
you. It's good stuff. Here's enough. Like I said, I was ordering, like, looking for like random first issues and one shots to buy, and one of the things I got, I'll have to tell Chris Cooper about this one. It's called The Quarrel by Mendoza and Molina. By who is this? Critical Entertainment published it, and it must have been Kickstarted or something originally. It's a $3 comic. It's only about 12 pages, but it's a bird story. No dialogue, just a hawk trying to make this other bird its dinner. So the whole thing, I don't know. We need our buddy Chris Cooper here to tell us what kind of bird that is. So the hawk is trying to, and that's the whole story. The hawk trying to hunt the sparrow or something. Usually it's sparrows. I don't know. But fun stuff. But it actually says Critical Entertainment, printed in April 2024, copyright 2023. So I figure, printed in Korea, I figure it must have been kickstarted at some time and, available through Diamond or something just last month, because that's where I ordered it through Final Order Cutoff. But a fun little comic. Oh, there's a nice.
That bird is a Baltimore Oriole.
The Baltimore. Oh, that's right. Look at those colors. Yeah. That's the colors of the Baltimore Orioles, now that you mention it.
In the beak, too.
The
You
beak
can tell by the beak.
gives it away.
There's another type of black and orange bird, which is the black and orange flycatcher. And no, this is not the same. What is this? Yeah, this is also black and orange. Yeah.
And you can go. It looks like Critical Entertainment is on all of the socials: Instagram, Critical Entertainment, Twitter, Critical Ent LA. Let's look at, here's a few more. Look like most of these are written by Mendoza. Life is an Open Door, Lifeboat, Minion, something, The First Americans. So there's some more Critical Entertainment comics. Though I don't think I've ever seen any of those. But it was a nice little 12-page comic. Oh, The First Americans is by Christopher Rita. That's in Tad Galusha. Let's see. The writer-publisher is Mason Mendoza. He's the one who's doing all this stuff. The artist is Alonzo Molina. The publisher is Christopher Rita. He's the one who writes First Americans. And then there's Critical Entertainment. So I got to say, a solid, nice little comic. I liked it better than the Badger. At least it made sense.
Beautiful artwork in it too.
Yeah, some nice artwork. Watercolor painted birds flying after each other. Artwork.
You know what's actually difficult is drawing the same type of bird from different angles, doing different movements.
You gotta be a real nature artist to do that.
Yeah, because you can try and copy photographs, but it's not the same thing. You really have to understand how the bird moves.
Finity says, last week, some comics dude on YouTube was describing this awesome idea about parallel universes. Then he literally gave the idea away live on air. Jared something, who knows? I got so many ideas that I'll never do. I'll give them all away. I'll give them all away.
Ideas don't make money. Overcharging on plates of spaghetti makes money.
I'll tell you my greatest Marvel Comics idea. Let me see. I think I have to actually have it in a sticky note somewhere. Where is it? Which, once again, isn't really an idea as much as it's. Hey, I just went full screen somehow when I tried to open my stickies. There we go. Not there. Not there. Did I lose my idea? Oh no, here we go. Here's my idea for a new team of Marvel villains. Man-Bull, Bulldozer, Ramrod, the Rhino, and Hammerhead, both 1 and 2. And their name is the Headbangers. Because every one of their superpowers is to hit you with their head.
That's your best idea?
That's my best idea right there.
What's your second best idea?
No way, man. I want the Headbangers. They all go around smashing people with their heads, man. There's no better idea than that.
Let's
You
create
may
a parallel.
think you have a better idea. You do not, my friend.
Let's create a parallel universe by traveling back in time and preventing you from having that idea.
That reminds me of my favorite insult that was on Fabian's door. He posted it from a fan letter that said, "Let's build a time machine and send Fabian to the future so he can suck there too."
Oh man.
And Fabian doesn't even remember that, but he had it posted on his office door, and I remember it. I just thought that was obviously he thought it was funny too at the time because he posted it on the door.
Well, I have a much more interesting idea. Dr. Doom marries Aunt May.
Please, Dr. Octopus already did that.
Yeah, she's been around.
Let's see. What was our next Keith Giffen comic? We did Omega Man. Legion of Substitute Heroes. This is the one they were just kind of talking about Keith Giffen working on his comedy chops. And with I think Ambush Bug was in this one too. Until
all of the substitute heroes actually have interesting powers.
Yeah. They are pretty interesting. And that's how he used them. I remember liking the Legion of Substitute Heroes.
Chlorophyll Kid in particular is extremely powerful.
Mm-hmm. And they mentioned he was drawing Superman just like Joe Shuster did. This issue was his tribute to Joe Shuster. Dedicated to the premier Superman artist, Joe Shuster. Then let's see. After that, we get Legion of Superheroes 10 for some reason in 1984. I think this is where he killed someone. Who did he kill? Was it Wolf Kid? What was that kid's name? Oh, maybe it was Karate Kid. I think this was the one he killed Karate Kid in. That was significant somehow. Then we get Ambush Bug. I don't remember this at all. Hex issues November 86 to February 87, issues 15 to 18. I have no memory. I probably never ever saw them because Hex was terrible.
Yeah,
it was
that
when
doesn't look
Jonah
familiar
Hex
at
became
all.
a science fiction book. and he got thrown into the future to be, despite some nice Mark Teixeira art on the originals, on the first issues, it was not very good. And then I guess Michael Fleischer and Keith Giffen and Carlos Garzon took it over and did something interesting. Do you guys know? Have you ever heard of Hex by Keith Giffen?
No.
I've heard of Hex. I've never heard of anyone who liked Hex.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think anything memorable happened in Hex.
No. Gorvidal says the death of Karate Kid is in Legion number 10. We were talking. Okay, so it was. He killed Karate Kid.
If I was going to do something interesting with Hex, I would put him in a spaghetti western.
Yeah. I mean, the Jimmy Palmiotti. Jimmy
It would be
Palmiotti's
like the Badger. It would be like the Badger, but starring Hex.
Jimmy Palmiotti. When was it? It was the aughts, I think, when he took over Hex, and he did something interesting with it. He hired really cool artists to work with. Did you ever see any of that stuff?
I remember it came out.
Sounds vaguely familiar.
If you ever get a chance to look up the Jonah Hex stuff from, I don't know, the aughts or something, Jimmy Palmiotti was writing, about 40 issues went by. Some of the artists were European, too. I forget which ones he used. But he had some really good artists on it. But I guess, let's see. Hex number 17 stood out as Giffen strictly adhered to the traditional 9-panel grid format with black gutters and used it throughout the entire issue, except for the dramatic full-page explosion. As you read through, the panel layout controlled the pacing and trained you to accept that flow until the key moment. It had an unforgettable impact. Giffen creatively used a small number-shaped panels for the 3-second countdown to trigger the explosion. There's the 3-second countdown. I'd like to check those out now. They sound interesting. Then, of course, his next thing was Justice League. I would say this might be one of the things he's most known for. The Kevin Maguire writers were Keith Giffen plot, J.M. DeMatteis dialogue, Keith Giffen layouts, Kevin Maguire pencils, and Terry Austin inks. This like for those of you who weren't there in 1987, once again, this is during the heart of Dark Knight Returns and Watchmen, grim and gritty rebirthing of mainstream superhero comics. And their Justice League had more in common with a sitcom. Yeah. It was the opposite of grim and gritty. It was fun and funny. Gore Vidal is saying, Giffen's artwork was even more radical in Hex. I liked his brief work on it, but like you, Road Warrior Hex didn't appeal to me. Yeah. I never even got to his issues. I remember buying a first couple and going, whoo, maybe even just the first one. But you were a fan of his Justice League, Wilson?
Yeah, I think that's where I really got to, remember his name.
Right.
Was in those Justice League issues. Like I was aware of Ambush Bug as an outskirt thing. Like that was like he was up there with like Maisie Man. I was aware of it, but I may have not actually got the books.
Right.
And then maybe I had the Superman issues, but I don't think so. It really wasn't until Justice League that I at least knew him. The name itself was there. And I remember the name and I remember those books. I did enjoy the Justice League books.
What about you, Chris? Did you buy any of his Justice League?
Not till years later.
Yeah.
But I think that is the first time I remember him as a name.
Right.
And because of that, I kind of just associated a certain look with him. And then when I saw how he drew, I was like, oh, this is way. I really like his art. I feel like I've seen it everywhere because he does lots of layouts.
Yeah.
So yeah, I always kind of like thought like, I'd like to see more of just his regular art. But then I feel like that Trencher book,
Right.
it kind of feels like he's doing a specific thing that's not like
Right.
all of his art looks.
He was doing something completely different with Trencher. He was like drawing without picking his hand up off the page or something. Let's see. Did I have Trencher in here?
But did that start with Lobo?
What was that?
Did he start that funky art with Lobo?
Oh, no. He always had kind of funky art, but Trencher was the most funky. Trencher was just like as wild as it gets.
Yeah, I didn't know if like that wild, like one of the Lobo books looked exactly like that or not.
I don't think they did. I haven't seen a whole lot of his Lobo. Let me just flip to his Lobo here and see what they got. Yeah, because I think Simon Bisley did a lot of his Lobo. So it was like Simon Bisley drawing over breakdowns by Keith Giffen. So I don't think it looked anything like Keith Giffen.
Okay.
Yeah, because that was his. It says in here that was his writing process. He would write in layouts. That's why he ended up being the plotter and doing a lot of layouts for people, because that was all part of his writing process. Yeah. Says Corvette also says Kevin McGuire drew the best smirks. He was good at expressions, that's for sure.
Yeah,
And
very true.
here's a famous Kevin McGuire panel.
Yep.
Mhm.
And then Batman punches out Guy Gardner, knocks him out with one punch.
One punch.
But yeah, that Justice League hit hard. I mean, it hit big when it came out. Justice League #1. That was the hot book for a while. And of course, how many times has this cover been imitated?
Oh yeah, completely.
That's probably the most imitated one of the most homaged, imitated covers ever.
I can't believe I haven't done it.
Yeah, I can't believe it.
They haven't paid you yet to do it. Let's hold an auction. Who gets to be the one that takes home a sketch of Chris Gerusso's take on Justice League #1?
Crickets.
The one comic
Yeah,
that was on my
we
pull
don't have any
list
takers.
was Snot Girl. This is the one that's about a fashion blogger and her trials and tribulations and romances. I'm surprised to see it again. I always called this one back in the day the comic I never thought I'd like. And this issue 18, we've had 16, 17, and 18 came out in the last few months. But before then, issue 15, I think, was out in 2017. So it's like, all right, they're doing Snot Girl again. It's still on my pull. It's like once something's on my pull list, it never gets deleted. So 5 years later, when it comes out again, I get the issues automatically. But it's fun. I like that it's not for everyone, since I don't think everyone's looking for a fashion blogger book, but I like it. Oh, looks like Gore Vidal says they plan to collect the entire Justice League run this year. Well, that's cool.
Cool.
What was I just looking at? Ooh. I cannot for the life of me remember. I was just looking at something that's a collection that's coming out, and I was like, ooh, maybe I'll get that. But then I'm like, I don't have enough room. What did I give away this week to my students? I gave one of my students, who I think he's the biggest comic fan. Do you remember the series The Massive?
No.
Published by Dark Horse. I think it came out like 30 issues, like 2013 to 2015. I forget. I think it had a few artists, but they were all, and it was about I bought all 30 issues of it, so I obviously liked it. But I was like, you know what? I'm never going to read this again. It was sort of like a post-ecological collapse world, and the Massive was like an ex-oil tanker that these sort of environmental people who are trying to put together the world again, steam around on, or whatever you do on an oil tanker. What do they call? They motor around on, they oil burn around on the world, trying to help put it back together. And it's all about like subterfuge, and there's spy stuff going on and things like that. So like I said, I read it once, month to month, and enjoyed it. But I was like, you know what? I really need the room, and let's pass these on to someone. So that's what I gave away this week. In comics, Jared gave away this week. I also gave a book. I would call it a coffee table book, but it's really only 8.5 by 11, called The History of Batman. And it's one of these sort of mass market books that's got like, random Batman comics and pictures of Chotskys and movies still, it's a sort of mass market Batman book. And I think it may have been Bunch who gave it to me like 20 years ago. And it's just been sitting around. And one of my students was like, "Oh, you're a comic fan? Batman's my favorite character." And I was like, "Let me see if I can find something Batman for you." And that's what I found to give to her. I have a Wonder Woman one too. I'll have to find a Wonder Woman fan. Gore Vidal says, I plan to collect it. Aha. And eventually it'll come into my shop and no one will care about it. So he'll get it for cheap. He'll be on the lookout for it. And no one will care about it. That describes most of my collection. Matter of fact, at my LCS this week, got to meet my friend Rob there this week. So I was hanging out with two of us, were talking. Then we started talking to this other guy who I think was a new customer to the shop. And he was one of these guys. He was telling us about his collecting days. He was one of these guys who was a real comic book collector. He was buying an old issue of Superman, like a Golden Age issue of Superman or something like that. And he was telling us all about his collection, and I think he was a few years older than me, so he must have been 60 or is in his early 60s. And he had been collecting Golden Age Superman since he was a kid. His father used to take him to the Phil Suling conventions, and he used to buy, as many Golden Age Supermans as he could with as little money as he could. I think he said the oldest one he had, he like one day spent he said he used to come home. He used to go to the Phil Suling conventions in the 70s. And he'd come home because he'd mow lawns and do this and do that and save up to go to the convention and spend like $50 at the convention, which was a lot of money for a kid in the 70s. So he used to come home with a ton of comics. And he said one day he came home with one $50 Superman comic from Golden Age Superman. I forget which issue he said. Old, it was $50 in 1973 or whenever it was. And he and his father used to get home, and they used to walk in like 100 comics. They'd bring in boxes of comics, and he brought in this one comic this one week, and his mother was like, "Where are the rest of them?" And he's like, "No, this is the only one I bought. It was $50." And she was like, "What? You spent $50 on one comic?" So we got to hear his stories about collecting comics in the 70s. That was pretty fun. and telling us that he also, over the years, befriended the guy who runs Metropolis Collectibles. I don't remember his name. But he said he's a really nice guy who helped him out over the years. Let's see. Finity says, I have almost no DC product, but I do have the first few Justice League Dark. Great stuff. Okay, I never read that stuff. Gore Vidal says, I'm not joking. The shop sold me for like $15 over 30 issues of Bone. Wow. I believe you. I believe you. Well, it reminds me.
Price. This reminds. How often would shops use the wizard prices back in the day?
There were shops who did.
When I worked in the shop, we used the Beckett's Guide, and I don't think we ever used the Wizard's Guide at all.
Being that one of the shops near me was the Wizard comic shop, I'm pretty sure they used the guide. Garib Seamus's comic shop, where it all started.
Spider's Web or something like that?
No, Wizard.
It was called Wizard.
Wizard of Comics. The Wizard of Comics. That was actually the name of it. And I didn't go there but a couple of times. It was a small hole in the wall shop when it started. But apparently it was their monthly newsletter that got turned into Wizard Magazine. And Gore Vidal says, and for $25, I got the entire Bruce Jones Hulk run and 10 more Hulk books. Been enjoying it. Yeah, that was I think I still have the hardcovers on my shelf of the Bruce Jones run. They were pretty fun. I remember Peter David talking about that run of the Bruce Jones Hulk, where he really turned it into more like The Fugitive. Have you read any of those?
A couple.
That's where they introduced Mr. Green and Mr. Blue.
Yeah. Bruce Jones and J.R. Jr. drew it. I
think I started it. I do vaguely remember some of that.
But I specifically remember in the stories, it was mostly about Bruce Banner being a fugitive. And then, like, at the end of the issue, he would turn into the Hulk, almost most of the time off camera. And that would, like, solve whatever plot was going on. The Hulk would smash it. But I remember Kurt Busiek writing about it admiringly. Because he was like, he's like, the Hulk is a hard character to write because he's so powerful. And I came up with all this stuff. It never occurred to me to just take him out of the book. But that's what Bruce Jones has done, and he turned it into I would say that was the because the Hulk now is very often a horror comic, like the latest I think because I think it was the Bruce Jones who first turned it into a horror comic, and then of course Al Vey's written run turned it into a body horror comic. And I think even the latest, someone was just showing me, I forget where I was seeing it, either at the shop or on YouTube, and it's very much a horror comic again. So I think that's been sort of the modern, or at least the last 20 years take on the Hulk, has been the Hulk as horror comic. Besides the Planet Hulk stuff. Let's see. Gore Vidal says, in the letters page, some readers complained it was a banner and not a Hulk book and stopped buying it. One complained it was like the TV show. Yeah, it really was different at the time. He removed the Hulk from the book. And I just remember pictures of Bruce Banner by the glow of the laptop trying to remain calm and get things done. But Planet Hulk was a fun take, too. Did any of you guys read Planet Hulk?
Oh, I love Planet Hulk.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was an enjoyable series.
Right.
And then also the what was leading up to Planet Hulk also. So the when running around as a gladiator and that stuff was fun because
Yeah. Even
again, taking Hulk out of the Marvel universe, so to speak, kind of
yeah.
remind me of when they shrunk him.
Right.
I
Right.
remember reading those back issues where he had
Gorilla.
off Earth adventures. Was
Right.
always interesting.
Harlan Ellison wrote those, right?
I don't recall.
I
Those
think.
I've read. I read like disparaging pieces of it that I
Uh,
knew. I knew of it that he got shrunk into the microverse, but I don't really know like that whole run.
and that Planet Hulk came out back in my buying mostly collected edition days to try out because there weren't a lot of comics that suited my taste. So I even tried out some of the Scar Son of Hulk collected editions that were pretty good. They were pretty good too, which is like an offshoot from the Planet Hulk. World War Hulk wasn't any good though. I don't know if you read any of that.
I read some of it. That was also during a time where they just started to do that. Where's the actual story? Because then you had like World War Hulk
Right,
spin-off types of stuff.
right.
They were doing things like that, so I kind of like fizzled out after that. Because again, it's like it was cool that the Hulk's coming back to Earth and he's angry, um, but again, it didn't really do anything for me.
There
Like
wasn't
Planet
much that
Hulk was a lot more fun.
I can't remember who. Someone lent me the trade of that because I was like waiting for it to get all collected. Someone who's like, "Oh, you want to read the World War Hulk trade? Here," and they lent it to me, and I read it, and I was like, there's not much here. There's the Hulk mad at people, and maybe an occasional fight.
Yeah,
There wasn't a whole lot being done in that one. I don't think I've read much Hulk. I read a couple of issues of the Al Vey written Hulk, the body horror Hulk. That was okay.
Mortal Hulk.
So,
That was
yeah,
the
Immortal
storyline.
Hulk. That's it. The Immortal Hulk.
Yeah, I heard good things about it, but I never read it
Yeah,
myself.
that was actually a hot book for a while. The early issues, because that was one of the examples of people wanting to read it.
Yeah,
So the early issues, not that the Immortal Hulk was showing up in a movie. You know how I know I think the movie influence on back issue prices era is gone. Because the Red Hulk is appearing in what Fantastic Four? I can't even remember what, and nobody cares.
Captain America movie.
Captain America, is it? Nobody cares. I haven't seen one video about buying the first issue of the Red Hulk. No one cares. So I think we're past that era of speculators buying first appearances because they may be in a movie. No one cares that the Red Hulk is appearing on screen.
I think it's because all the speculators went out and bought all those books, and people are like, "Yeah, that's great. I don't want it."
No. Well,
You know,
I think it was also. I remember it maybe 4 or 5 years ago. A bunch of speculators saying, "You know what? Don't buy villain books because first appearance of villains, people usually don't care after. People were only buying them because they were appearing in the movie. Then the movie was over and nobody cared. So they're like, you know what? Chasing villain books is probably not a good idea. If you get it, sell it right away if the price
yeah,
is high. And I have to say, I think they were right on that because I don't see anybody chasing villain books anymore.
yeah. It's just there was never really anything, to connect it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, I mean, just the regular, movies based on a comic book never did anything for the comic book itself.
Right.
Never brought in any more readers.
No.
Not too many people, because people would just go out and get like, trades and stuff like that. Or it's like, oh, I want, I want the movie and the comic to match, and they don't.
Right.
And they were never going to. So Yeah, I think that little heyday of movies and comics, they'll keep making movies out of comic book stuff, but I don't think that's going to affect the comics at all.
Not fewer and fewer people will care about the comics, or the same number. I don't know.
Yeah, who knows?
Who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men? The shadow.
Shadow.
So, what are you working on tonight, Chris?
Flash Gordon.
Quarterback, New York Jets.
That's the one.
That always cracks me up when he says that. I don't know why. Super Bowl weekend. Let's see. Gore Vidal says, at my shop, first appearances still sell books. This week, first Herbie in Fantastic Four after the trailer dropped. Pretty fun. Pretty funny. Wow. I have not seen that on YouTube at all. I mean, I saw Herbie in there. But I haven't seen anyone on YouTube saying, buy this book. That's interesting. That I guess somewhere people still care about Herbie first appearances.
Yes, that makes sense because all the other first appearances of all those Fantastic Four members, those books sold when the first movie came out.
Yeah.
So it's like those are already sold and been slabbed already.
Where was Herbie's first appearance? In one of those didn't he appear? They actually ran him in a regular issue of Fantastic Four. That's right. I remember that now. Somewhere in like 206, 208, all of a sudden.
He had to be there from the cartoon, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think he was a cartoon creation.
Right. It was a cartoon creation, but I remember they had him in for like an issue of the just so they could like have him there and smash him or something. Probably for copyright reasons.
That Japanese brain from the Tomb of Dracula, Dr. Sun, Marv Wolfman had brought him over to Nova, and they finished a Nova storyline in Fantastic Four.
Ah.
So Dr. Sun took over Herbie.
Gore Vidal says Ornella Muti, best part of the Flash Gordon film.
Muti. She's Italian. Ornella Muti. From Italy.
Ornella Muti. It's madness, Jared, and keeps my shop doing great business.
Flash.
King of the impossible. I loved that movie when it hit HBO. It was a lot of fun to watch over and over again.
Oh, yeah.
Save every one of us.
It works so well.
I remember Paul Becton, who was somebody we worked with at Marvel. He was a staff colorist. Hated that movie. Because he was, a little older than us, and he was a Flash Gordon fan from the old Flash Gordon stuff. And that movie was just too camp for him. I understand. Let's see. Finity says, half trivia. The first Flash Gordon comic book predates the first Buck Rogers comic book, but the first Buck Rogers movie predates the first Flash Gordon movie. Or it's the other way around. Didn't one of them just become public domain, some of its earliest strips? Which one was it?
Buck Rogers has, but he cannot be called Buck yet. He could only be called William.
No, I think now he can be called Buck. I think this year.
Because the strips are from 1929.
Because the story was he was already in the public domain, but not being called Buck. And I think this year he goes into like everything from the 1920s is now in the public domain. So.
Oh, okay.
So he can be called. I specifically read that when they were saying it. So that's why I know part of him was already in the public domain, but now his name is, I think, how it goes. So Buck Rogers versus Godzilla is going to be any day now.
There you go.
Oh, I was just wondering if you were bad and it took away. Huh?
Chris is very busy in his studio.
And then I shifted.
We need an even better idea than Buck Rogers versus Godzilla.
Wall behind the door. Okay. And that's why I put the turtle poster down.
What's that?
Was on my.
I don't know yet.
You're coming up.
Godzilla is the one that goes to sleep
Oh,
and
that
goes
was-
into the
I had
future.
that out.
I
Yes.
have a couple of volumes of the Buck Rogers Sunday strip, which doesn't even star Buck Rogers.
Really?
I didn't know. The Buck Rogers Sunday strip stars his sidekick, whose name I can't remember.
It was Wilma's kid brother. Buddy Deering.
Yeah. So it's the Buck Rogers Sunday strip starred his teenage sidekick and his teenage sidekick's girlfriend or her, So it's like completely different than and it's like a beloved strip too. The Buck Rogers Sundays, but it's like no Buck Rogers in them.
Unfortunately, the TV series from the 80s is not in the public domain. I just want to see Bucky.
A lot of
Bitty,
people
bitty, bitty.
loved that. I never got into it.
I enjoyed it, but I was right. I think I was because I was the right age for it.
Yeah.
Because I think you had to be a certain age for that. Because it was
I knew people who were my age who loved it, but I did not.
yeah, that I enjoyed. I enjoyed that immensely. I had revisited earlier, well, not in the summer, just because I started picking up the old action figures again. Because it's like, oh, that's cool. Because it's a deadline. There are only about 9 figures, and so I've been picking up some of the ones that were broken because one, they're cheaper, broken, and two, I could fix the O-ring because it's
Right.
just replacing a rubber piece. And it was like, oh, okay. So I was like, let me see if the show still holds up. And it's like you could do an episode every few days. Can't do too many back to back. And there were fun stuff with it because then you're watching it, it's like, oh, this actor was in it or that
Right.
actor, or you could see, wow, they reused that one set over and over again. It's just a different paint job. But it's like this is the same room. So it's interesting to watch it that way. And an appearance of Buster Crabbe was kind of neat because
Okay.
there was a great joke in there. It was like, oh, I was doing this before you were born. It's like 'cause he was both Buck Rogers and Flash Gordon at some point. And he was called I think Captain Gordon in that series.
Okay. And Gore Vidal asked Jared, did Godzilla versus Gatsby end? It did end with issue 3 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
Issue 3 came out. Wilson got his last week, and
got
his
mine
favorite
last week.
line of the week was in it.
Yep.
Now he truly is
the
great Gatsby.
It was so.
It was a really good last issue.
It was a
Don't
good
want to
last
ruin
issue.
too many of the surprises for you, but it was a
Yeah.
really good last
Really
issue.
good issue, and there was so many classic Godzilla trope and monster tropes that it was a lot of fun. Okay,
Yeah.
this doesn't ruin anything, but it's just so great and so much fun
Yeah.
in the book.
And show him the very last page, which doesn't ruin anything either. The very last page ties it in with the novel.
Yeah, it's basically it ends the way the novel pretty much ended.
Right. The mysterious figure coming out of the woods to shoot. Yeah, so the last page ties it in with the novel. I thought that was good.
I thought that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And basically it is Godzilla versus the Universal monsters without saying it's Godzilla versus Universal monsters.
Is werewolves, Frankenstein's monster, and a mummy.
And this castle joke is so much fun.
Oh, that's him saying, let's split up and going all around.
Has a very almost like a Richard Scarry drawing.
Yeah.
Type of thing, like from the children's books.
Oh, I just noticed Godzilla's on the outside of the castle to the left there. I didn't even notice that when I was looking at it. Huh.
A lot of fun. Like this is the type of not team up, crossover I enjoy. Completely silly, but it works within its own world.
Yeah.
And so much fun.
Right. Gore Vidal says, I plan to get it. They have all the issues at my shop for half price. Worth it at full price. So certainly
Yeah.
worth it at half price.
Very much so.
That's great. Yeah.
He is truly the great Gatsby.
Yeah.
Fantastic line.
Yeah, my shop doesn't discount comics really. They don't have a dollar bin, which I don't blame them, because why your regulars don't want to see all the comics they buy for full price in a dollar bin. So I know comics he can't sell. In the past, he's sold, he's just cleared out to those people who make the mystery boxes. $50 worth of comics for $40. We guarantee you at least $60 in value. So I know in the past he sold them in bulk to guys like that, because, like I said, sometimes when he buys those 1 in 500 covers, that means he's got 500 copies of some comic that he can never sell. So I imagine your shop must, Gore, must get, 4 issues of Godzilla versus the Great Gatsby, sell 3 of them, and then discount the other one, or something like that. Or maybe they only get 1 in. I don't know, and have to discount it. To clear it out. Clear this out. Let's see, what other comic did I get? Once again, I was just looking for things to buy, so I back in final order cutoff, because I only had 1, so I said, I may as well buy this one. The Book of Cutter. It's a square bound one. But $10, $9.99, which was a little expensive for me. I remember when I was trying to decide whether to pre-order it or not, I was like, $10. Oh, but I think it's like 64 pages. But it turns out a good bit of those pages are text. And this is, what's the name of the series? Something's Killing the Children. Do you remember that series? I think the lead in that series is named Erica Slaughter, and she's a monster hunter. I think James Tinian writes it. I forget who. I don't know if that's the regular art. I don't think he's the regular artist on House of Slaughter. I forget who that. Or not House of Slaughter. Something is Killing the Children, and then they spun off Something is Killing the Children to another book called House of Slaughter. So there's 2 Something is Killing the Children books. And let's see if Paulo knows the artists on this, because they're from Europe. Werther del Edera is an Italian artist born in the south of Italy. He has worked for the biggest publishers in both Italy and the U.S., with his works ranging from Loveless, DC Vertigo, to the graphic novel Spider-Man Family Business, Marvel. In Italy, he has drawn Sergio Bonelli's Dylan Dog and The Crow, Memento Mori, a co-production between IDW and Edizioni BD, for which he has won Best Cover Artist, Best Series, and Best Artist. Have you heard of him?
No, but if they let him draw Dylan Dog, he's good. What's his name again?
Werther, Dell apostrophe Edera. Let me see. Is it? There's the last name there.
Why does he have a German name?
And this guy, Muerto.
Oh wait, if it's from northern Italy, it's quite possible.
Born in the south of Italy.
Oh, south of Italy. Then that does make sense. If he was from the north of Italy, it could have been from Bolzano, which is the place that Giorgio Moroder comes from. Yeah.
Not dead. Miguel Muerto.
The Dylan Dog he did was Dylan Dog Batman.
Okay. Not dead. Miguel, Miquel, Muerto, has lived in Barcelona since 1992. Where he studied illustration, ran a small press, and worked as a graphic designer until feeling entitled to chase his dream, doing comics. The Druid's Path, 2016, was his comic debut as a full artist, a traumatic experience he swore would never happen again. Coloring comics was the first good step he's taken in his career, and he's been happily following that path ever since. But like I said, Something is Killing the Children is about Erica Slaughter, who's a monster hunter. And it turns out there's like a whole, she's from the House of Slaughter, which is the name of the second book, who's a whole, long house of monster hunters. And this is kind of Book of Cutter is sort of an origin story of all these monster hunter houses going back in time, and some of it's told in text, some of it's told in comics, and it goes back to like the first houses of monster hunters were in Europe, and they learned to be secret. I think the first one they said was in 1600. I forget where, but eventually, I think House of Cutter is the one in London. And they eventually became the biggest house, and they expanded around the globe. And it's the story of that. What annoyed me a little was I'm not a big fan of scripts. So it's like the good back third of the book is the script and the uninked pages. I mean, unlettered pages. I don't like reading comic book scripts. So all this I just kind of skipped. So, I mean, for people who like that part of the process, I'm sure it's fine. But for some reason, that's not an interesting part of the process for me. But then, of course, in the back, they got lots of alternate covers. That's always good. So for a $10 package, it was a little much, but in the end, I enjoyed it. It was good for an off week when I only had one comic. Because who likes walking out of a comic shop with just one comic? Not me. Let's see. Gore says, my shop will discount new issues after a couple of weeks. Wow. 50% after 2 months. The comics end up in the dollar bin. Then they will have a 10 for $1 sale. Wow, they're really moving those out. But like I said, it's that kind of stuff that makes me feel bad, feel like more of a sucker. So I don't know if that's a good policy or not. I don't know.
Works for them.
Yeah.
You know? So more books found in the studio. This is from 1997. And this is, I think they called it Marvel X. And it's basically Japanese Marvel comic book.
I don't remember that one at all.
So it's a thick trade paperback.
Let's go solo with you. Marvel X.
Marvel X issue number 10, but it's a Japanese.
Is it a trade paperback or an anthology?
I am not too sure because I never really went into it too much. So it says Marvel Super Comics number 33.
Is it in Japanese or
Marvel
English?
X. It's in Japanese. It's all in Japanese. So this basically is focusing on Spider-Man. So you get like a history of him. You get the story. You basically get a whole history of Spider-Man.
Oh, wow.
Leading up to the storyline that would be Spider-Man 300. And then it prints Spider-Man 300 in this story.
So it's in Japanese, but it's published the Western way.
Yes.
That's interesting.
And it follows the Western story, the Western way, as you say.
And it reads from our back to front. I mean, front to back.
Yes, completely. So it has the story. It has what happens with the Venom symbiote. And then it goes, Spider-Man going back into the red and blue. You got a Venom information guide there. So it's leading to Venom. Then it has a reprint of Amazing Fantasy number 15.
Uh-huh. I wonder if this was published in English first and then translated.
I've
I have
never
no
seen it.
idea.
Then
Yeah,
there's
I've
a
never
back,
seen it either.
and the backup story is an X-Men story.
From the Dark Phoenix saga. It's an interesting way to publish. I mean, you have
Yeah.
Spider-Man from the 80s, Spider-Man from the 60s, and Spider-Man from the 90s. No, it's 88.
And
here.
then John Byrne X-Men
Yeah, it's John Byrne
From the
X-Men.
late
as a
70s.
backup one. And then there's some articles in here.
Huh.
That almost look like Marvel Age type articles and then rewritten. I have not looked at this since I got it, and this is, I looked through this before I even had the the translator, so it
Right.
has very much a magazine-ish feel as well. And there was also a piece in here that I wanted to show that was interesting as well about. I don't know if this has to do with what was either going on in Marvel Japan, because we did have a Pacific Rim office.
Right.
I don't know if this is connected to that at all. I'm going to have to, run it through a translator. But again, it was one of those things that I thought was really interesting.
Huh. Do you know what year did you say it was from?
The date that I found on one of the piece of papers was 97.
Okay.
On what would be, I guess, the barcode. Let's see. Marvel Super Comics, and then it does say 1990. Copyright is 1997.
Okay. There we go.
So it seems like this was just something special, but it is interesting that it is done like as an American type book.
Yeah, yeah. Looks like Wizard Magazine or something.
Almost. Yeah. But what I just find funny is like it's issue number 33 here, and then it seems like, I guess, story number 10 here. So I'm not too sure how they had laid out this system.
That's like when I was looking at this cover of Snot Girl, it's Snot Girl number 18, Cold Shoulder, Weekend 2, Part 1. I mean, that is an awful lot of title and parts for one single comic.
They're making it difficult on purpose.
What the heck is that? Infinity says, if it's a comic book, it needs those dialogue boxes, huh? And them thought balloons, though. I can actually remember a few years ago, I've since sold it, when I bought the John Carter Warlord of Mars omnibus. Came out around the same time the movie did. And for some reason, the next year when it dropped in price, Amazon sent me a deal on it. The omnibus, I think the omnibus had dropped down to like $35. And then and Amazon hardly ever does this. They've only done it to me like 2 or 3 times. They said, oh, but for you, a deal, $20 off. So I ended up getting the John Carter omnibus for $15. Shipped and taxed. Shipping probably shipping was included. And I remember I finally sat down to read it a while later, and I really, really enjoyed it. And part of the reason I enjoyed it was because it was written in a style that just doesn't exist anymore. It was written in a sort of 1970s Marvel style with thought balloons and captions and word balloons all working in conjunction. And I was like, and it was really good. I was just like, and it had that sort of, adapted from a book style too. But I was like, and it was, and I really enjoyed it because it's a style that hasn't existed in, 40 years now. And it was really well done. I was like, I liked it a lot more than I ever thought I would. I kind of bought it on a lark, and and it sat on the shelf for a year because I wasn't really that interested in reading it. But I was like, wow, I really enjoyed it when I read it. So if you know what you're doing with thought balloons, they can be really helpful writing tool.
Yeah.
Not that I ever write with thought balloons.
Your characters don't think, they do.
Yeah, except for the thought balloon that's over Chris's head right now. The fools! They don't know my client has been Marvel Comics all along. That thought balloon. Right, I need Chris in a solo layout and a screenshot so I can make that comic later. There we go. Now I can put that thought balloon in.
The fools, they can't tell I have a thought balloon over my head.
That'll be the name of the strip, Those Fools.
Those fools. And that's how every thought balloon will start. Dun, 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 dun. What's the last good comic you read, Chris?
That's the name of the strip. Those Fools.
Yes.
Yes.
What's the last good comic you read, Chris?
Besides G-Men.
I read this book called Silver. It's like 2-volume hardcovers.
Silver?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
it's vampires.
Ah.
Like a con man gets a gang together and they con some vampires.
Con men versus vampires. I like it.
I forget the name of it's a writer artist, Randy Green. Randy Green suggested it. It's his books. He's like, here, read this. So I read them. They're really good.
A U.S. one, or that sounds like it could be manga.
It felt 100% American. Let me look it up.
He's gonna find out what book it is.
Silver book?
Huh?
Silver.
Oh, you know what? I forgot Randy probably has one here.
Randy will show it to us.
Jody, well, Randy's not here, but Jody's on the case.
Jody will show it to us.
Here it is.
Let's see.
Stephen Frank.
Stephen Frank. Let's go full screen with you so we can see it. Okay.
Okay, that's European.
Ah,
it is?
European.
Yeah, Stefan Frank.
Stefan Frank.
Stefan Frank.
Frank.
I don't know. Americans call him Stephen Frank. But it's a lot of real real good black and white stuff.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah, apparently it's his only comic.
But this is volume 1. It's pretty
big volume.
Pretty thick brick, and the series. Well, the second one is the end of the story. I don't know if there'll be a. There's a teaser at the end of the second book that suggests the characters might go on to another adventure.
Only time will tell.
Yeah, but I don't know.
He doesn't seem to be working in comics anymore. His biography on BD Tech says that he's been working in animation.
Ah.
Paradoxalement, c'est aussi aux USA que j'ai pu réaliser un film spécial des Schtroumpfs.
Animation steals a lot of comic book guys because they know how to draw, And it's
Yeah,
much
draws.
less drawing to work in animation than on a comic book.
They did
And
something
they
with
can
the
draw fast.
Smurfs.
Yeah, they draw fat. They expect less work than doing a comic book, because doing the comic book is about the most drawing work you can do.
Yeah. He did something with this cartoon with the Smurfs, and he has a series called Corneille and Bernie.
The last book I got this week is a new Farrell Dalrymple book called Robot Todd. Let me get it big for you.
Interesting art.
And who's it by? Floating World Comics, which is a comic shop up in Portland near Sleepy Reader's house. And they do some publishing too. And it's a strange comic about reviving this little robot and him waking up in this strange fantasy world. And I don't really know what this. Oh, that's a wraparound. I don't really know what to say the story is about. He meets this guy in a graveyard. Not too bright for a robot. There's this little girl doll. I guess you could just call this a weird indie comic. But I'll buy some more issues of it. I have no way. Let's see if there's any description in it. Here we go. The beginning says, I am Todd. I seem to be currently incapacitated, and I don't remember how I came here, or if there was anything else before this moment. I know that my body is resilient, can repair itself, and recharge its quantum core from nearly any power source. It is pointless to consider what happens when my systems and or this environment eventually perish, as all things must. Only the present is real. Everywhere I see magic, beauty, and wondrous life abounding. Okay. But then, as he says, I know that my body is resilient, can repair itself, and recharge its quantum core from nearly any power source. But in the very beginning, he's broken, isn't repairing himself, and some scientist repairs him. So I found that a little weird. Or even some magician. She's using like magical powers to repair him. And then, I wonder if that's his font. Down the bottom, right here, it's got the alphabet in uppercase and lowercase.
Yeah, maybe that is his font.
I wonder if that's the font he has made for this book. Where's our O? Hello, hello. Those look different. No. The font on the book does not quite, although the Y's match. The O, the lowercase O does not. So I don't know if that's the font he used on this, or if he hand lettered it, but for some reason there's an alphabet under the indicia, lowercase and uppercase. And this was a $5 book, pretty thick for a $5 book. So, Robot Todd Part 1. I don't know how many parts it is, but I'll put it on my pull list and get whatever comes out next when it shows up in final order cutoff. Mm-hmm.
You haven't been buying any of those those new ECs.
I bought one or two of them. They weren't very good.
Yeah. Yeah, I was taking a look at what was the name of this thing? Cruel Kingdom #2. So
Right.
It has 3 stories in it. The first's okay. The second's okay.
I liked Creepshow better.
Mhm.
Though lots of nice covers on those EC ones. I'll have to collect the digital. I'll have to collect digital versions of the covers.
Yeah, I think this one is Adam Polina.
There's yes.
Yeah, the third story was the one I liked best. None is amazing, but they're pretty good.
I think I've brought the first two, like the first issue of the first series to come out and the 1st issue of the next series to come out, and neither of them impressed me enough to spend. I think they're $5 an issue. I was like, they weren't that good. Oh, and my color fidget pin came with an inspirational sticker. I give myself permission to take the time to process, pause, or pivot when I need to. So there you go. There's your inspirational thought for the week.
I love those create alternate realities.
I'll put it in my sketchbook. That's where I put stickers. Any stickers I get during the year go in my sketchbook. I don't get that many stickers during the year, though.
I know what you mean. I don't get that many stickers, and I usually don't have anything to put them on. But lately, I've been putting them onto my clipboard.
Aha.
So, because I had gotten a couple of stickers this year. So this was like from a Cracker Jack box.
Yeah.
A buddy of mine gave me this sticker of his character. Is a I voted early sticker. And then this sticker came to me when I got it from I bought an action figure, and the person like makes his own stickers about I love loose figures. So it's like he put it into the box, and it's like I had nothing to put it on, so it's like I have this little clipboard, and I was like, oh, I'll start putting it on the back of this particular clipboard.
This is a random sticker I had lying around that I made of a stoplight. Sometimes to get myself started, I make my own stickers. And here is one of my fellow teachers had this little thing going on, AI creator engineer, to help create things. So I got a sticker for that. And these are, if you remember a month or two ago, Video Homicide Channel sent me that pack of zines, and it had stickers in it. So it's got a Garbage Pail Kid sticker. And these are ones he made. Ricky, what's Ricky's last name? I can't remember. He used to be Bluntzilla. There's another Garbage Pails one. Garbage Pail Kids he made. And Filthy Ralph's LSD-coated rolling papers. Raise the Dead. So I put those stickers in Made in Hell. Cinema 187. That's the name of his zine. All right, it's getting our time to wrap up. So we should say good evening for the night. And leave them with some balloons and some confetti. There we go. A little confetti, my favorite, the balloons. Maybe some lightning. The laser show, pardon me. There we go. Anybody have any final words for tonight? Besides, give yourself permission to do this stuff.
The good times and the bad times are happening at the same time.
Ooh.
Nice.
Ooh. Chris is deep tonight. He's deep. All right. Well, everybody have a good night. We'll catch you next time, and I don't care who wins the Super Bowl. I'll watch it, but, I'm a Giants fan.